He was holding her hand tightly, almost crushing her little fingers to keep her from running to me. "How dare you hit a 10-year-old little girl?" I scream. Marina began to yell back at me, waving her arms angrily at me. With her arms in the air, her sleeves rolled down, and I saw her bare arms. They were covered in track marks, the telltale sign of a heroin user. "You degenerate drug addict. You're still using, aren't you?"
What? Oh no, you're accusing me of that, in my own house.
With that, she jumped at me and knocked me over. She grabbed my hair and hit my head repeatedly against the cold hardwood floor. I started to black out, too weak to fight her off of me. Suddenly, she was pushed off of me. First, I thought Mason had finally came to his senses and was the one fighting her. As I began to see again, I realized that he still stood at the foot of the stairs, just watching all of us. Kinsley had pushed her off of me. I quickly turned to look at Marina. She was leaning over Kinsley, her face red with anger. She was preparing to hit my poor daughter, when I hit her first, hard to her stomach with a bat I found in their hallway. She immediately fell to the floor, holding her stomach. Her groans finally made Mason move, and he rushed to her side. "My name is Audrey, and I thought my nightmare ended 4 years ago when I divorced my husband Mason. Unfortunately, it was just the start of another one. I filed for a divorce because I caught him sneaking around with another woman behind my back. Actually, my 10-year-old daughter Kinsley caught him. How horrible is it to discover your father with another woman and then have to tell your mother about it? I still feel so guilty for not seeing the signs sooner. I could have prevented her from going through that pain. Sometimes as a mother, you have to accept that you can't protect your child from everything. My therapist had to tell me that a lot after the divorce." Shortly after the divorce was finalized, Mason publicly announced the woman that he had been cheating on me with to be his girlfriend. Her name was Marina. Marina and Mason. Of course, I was humiliated, but I kept it to myself. The only contact that I had with him was when I dropped Kinsley off at his house for the one weekend a month that he got her. In the court hearings, he didn't get full custody, but a weekend visitation. I wasn't happy with it, but I still wanted my daughter to have some relationship with her father, even if he was a lying, cheating scumbag. He's still her father, after all. My therapist had to convince me of the importance of their relationship, despite how angry I still was with him. After some time, though, I realized that something weird was happening when Kinsley would go to visit her father. She would come back silent and would barely talk or look at me. She would only wear long sleeves that covered her arms and legs. This happened for several weeks before I finally decided to talk to her about it. "What's wrong, sweetheart? You always look so sad whenever you come back from your father's house."
"It's his girlfriend. She's mean to me, bosses me around, and makes me do hard chores around the house."
"Well, you need to do chores sometimes, sweetie." "But she's mean to you?"
"Yeah. I'm scared of her. She hits me sometimes too."
"What? Have you told your dad about this?"
"Yeah, and he doesn't care. He keeps saying it's just my imagination, and I'm lying because she's not you."
It all started to make sense. Whenever I would drop Kinsley off, I would see her tense up as if she was afraid. I already didn't like Marina, much less trust her, after she ruined my marriage. But this an entirely different matter. My daughter's safety would always come before any personal issues I have with someone. I told Kinsley that I would talk to her father and get things straightened out for her. I called Mason that evening and talked to him. "Do you know what your daughter said to me? She said that she doesn't feel safe in your house because of your girlfriend. She told me that she hits her."
I wish she would have said something to me about it. I promise you, everything is fine over here, and she's in perfectly safe hands when she's with me. A little discipline never hurt anybody.
"How can I trust you not to lie? You've lied to me before about Marina. Our divorce ringing any bells?"
A little discipline and hard work won't hurt anybody. You should be thanking me that she's getting it somewhere. You're just trying to start trouble so that you can take away what little time I get to have with my daughter. I won't let you take her from me, Audrey. I love Marina now. Get over it.
I hung up the phone. I was tired of talking to him. He clearly wasn't listening. That was just the first of many phone calls that I had with him. Each time I tried to ask him more about Marina, he wouldn't tell me anything, and kept telling me that Kinsley was fine. that she was only lying so that she could go back home to spend more time with me. You are the favorite parent after all, Audrey. She's 10. I wouldn't put it past her. I gave up trying to reason with him. If I was going to protect my daughter, I needed to do some snooping of my own. I couldn't keep Kinsley from seeing her father, but I could get her a better phone so she had a more reliable way to contact me if anything happened while at his house. I put off the monthly visitation for as long as I could, waiting until the very last weekend of the month. There were a few times where I was in the driveway of their house, and I could hear the two of them screaming at each other before I dropped her off. I felt so uneasy about the whole situation, but I really couldn't do anything about it. I did my best to be patient, and gathered as much information as I could. I talked to Mason's neighbors about the two of them, and they said that they've had to call the police a couple of times to file noise complaints. Apparently, a few weeks prior, the two of them had gotten into a huge fight with each other. It ended with Marina pushing Mason down a flight of stairs. He didn't press any charges, so nothing changed about their situation. I also found out that Marina had a past of drug addiction. When I talked to Mason about it, he swore up and down that she had been clean and sober for years. In January, I tried to do my usual of waiting until the last week of the month for Kinsley to visit her dad, but I got really sick. I kept fainting and was too lightheaded to even walk. I had to make a tough decision. I couldn't take care of Kinsley while I was sick like this. Against my better judgment, I called Mason and asked him to come pick up Kinsley, and he did. She had been gone for roughly 4 hours before she called me. She was panicking, whispering into the microphone.
Mom, I know you're sick, but I really want to come home. Marina hates me for no reason, Mom.
Why? What happened?
Marina made me make dinner like she usually does. And when I sat down to eat with them, she screamed that I shouldn't be sitting at the table with them at all. She hit me really hard, knocking the sauce on my plate all over the floor.
She hit you?
Yeah.
Where's your father? Did you tell him about what's going on?
Yes, but he said she was just disciplining me. I started crying and couldn't stop, so he locked me in this closet. It's so dark and I'm really scared, Mommy.
In the background of the call, I heard Marina screaming at the top of her lungs.
You naughty little sack of crap! I told you not to use that stinkin' phone in there. Your stupid father should have taken that away from you. Let's see how well it works when I smash it to bits.
I had read stories of mothers performing crazy feats of strength when their child was in trouble. I could only imagine it before, but this was the moment where I experienced it firsthand. Mason lived 2 hours away. As sick I was, I drove to go pick up my daughter that night. It didn't matter that I didn't have enough strength to change out of my pajama pants anymore. Fighting against the nausea and the dizziness was almost too easy because I was filled with so much anger. I sped the whole way there. I busted through the door. Marina came around the corner of the living room and began screaming at me. Mason came down the stairs holding Kinsley's hand. At first glance, it might have looked like a loving father providing support for his daughter in a scary situation, but I knew better. He was holding her hand tightly, almost crushing her little fingers to keep her from running to me. "How dare you hit a 10-year-old little girl?" I scream. Marina began to yell back at me, waving her arms angrily at me. With her arms in the air, her sleeves rolled down, and I saw her bare arms. They were covered in track marks, the telltale sign of a heroin user. "You degenerate drug addict. You're still using, aren't you?"
What? Oh no, you're accusing me of that, in my own house.
With that, she jumped at me and knocked me over. She grabbed my hair and hit my head repeatedly against the cold hardwood floor. I started to black out, too weak to fight her off of me. Suddenly, she was pushed off of me. First, I thought Mason had finally came to his senses and was the one fighting her. As I began to see again, I realized that he still stood at the foot of the stairs, just watching all of us. Kinsley had pushed her off of me. I quickly turned to look at Marina. She was leaning over Kinsley, her face red with anger. She was preparing to hit my poor daughter, when I hit her first, hard to her stomach with a bat I found in their hallway. She immediately fell to the floor, holding her stomach. Her groans finally made Mason move, and he rushed to her side. I grabbed Kinsley's hand, spat on their floor, and ran out the house. In the driveway, we called the police. When they arrived, they talked with the four of us. They lied, claiming that Marina never attacked us. Thankfully, the officer only had to take one look at my swollen and bloody face to tell that they were lying. The injuries were to the back of my head, and there was a little dent in the floor from where she banged my head onto the floor. Fortunately, I was able to protect Kinsley from being attacked again. With the police report and the Child Protection Services report, there was enough evidence to punish the two of them, despite all of their blatant lying. Mason lost all custody of Kinsley and had to pay a crazy expensive fine for child endangerment. It was such a large fine that he couldn't pay it all before the deadline. This happened for months, and the interest fees got larger and larger until he couldn't even make a dent in how much he owed. His solution was to try to sell some of the heroin that Marina had left behind. In a drug deal that went wrong, he tried to trick someone into paying 3 times more money than he should have, and the buyer caught on. The man was so angry that he crippled Mason's right hand with a pipe, the same hand that he used to try to keep Kinsley from running to me that night. Marina was found guilty of child abuse for beating Kinsley and was sent to prison for 10 years. For the first few weeks after the trial, she had to stay in the hospital before being transferred to the prison. When I had hit her with the bat, it had cracked a couple of her ribs. She stayed in the state hospital for months before being transferred to the prison's hospital. When she finally got there, she ended up still being a danger, just to herself this time. She turned to other inmates to be her source for drugs and alcohol while she was in prison. Apparently, someone had taught her how to make wine in the toilet, but she had missed a crucial step and ended up severely poisoning herself and died in the prison's infirmary. As for me and Kinsley, without those two psychos in our lives, we were finally able to live together in peace. My brother had heard of the fiasco that had happened with her father and volunteered to step in Kinsley's life so that she could have a positive male role model. It's made such a difference. He's been helping me with chores around the house, supporting Kinsley with school, and even helps out with our finances. I've never seen Kinsley happier in her life, and seeing her happy makes me happy. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.